In Brazil, an explosive phenomenon transformed the last decades of the 20th century into a spectacle of greed and desperation: the discovery of gold in Serra Pelada. What began as a simple search for fortune quickly turned into a mad race, leading thousands of people into devastating chaos filled with destruction, tragedies, and massacres. This place, which promised wealth and prosperity, ended up becoming a symbol of suffering and blood. Today we will explore the dark history of a region that reflects how unbridled ambition can destroy everything. A deep look at a chapter that defines the extremes of the human condition and the scars they leave on history. It all began in 1979, when a local farmer found a gold nugget in the mountainous region of Serra Pelada, in the state of Para. The news spread quickly, unleashing a human avalanche that left its mark forever. Thousands of men and women abandoned their homes, jobs, and lives to embark on the gold rush. The image of this mountain was radically transformed, becoming a gigantic crater surrounded by improvised camps and a chaos of crowds hungry for wealth. What was a pristine landscape became the scene of a frantic excavation that had consumed bodies, souls, and nature itself. Serra Pelada's geography played a crucial role in its transformation. What was once a lush Amazonian jungle landscape became an open wound in the earth. Massive deforestation, indiscriminate use of rudimentary tools, and exploitation of natural resources caused an irreversible environmental impact. Thousands of hectares were devastated, leaving barren land and completely displaced fauna. What was once a symbol of biodiversity became a lifeless land. Furthermore, the extreme weather conditions of the region only aggravated the difficult task of the thousands who came in search of fortune. Serra Pelada was not only a wound to the land, but also to those who inhabited it. At its peak, more than 100,000 people gathered in this place, creating one of the largest spontaneous human concentrations in history. The area became a state of absolute chaos. The workers, known as garimpeiros, worked in inhuman conditions, facing extreme temperatures, torrential rains, and the constant danger of landslides. Desperation pushed them to push their physical and mental limits in a daily struggle for survival. The social panorama was also bleak. Serra Pelada became a microcosm of inequality, corruption, and violence. The strongest controlled the best land and took advantage of the weakest, while organized gangs imposed their law with brutality. Clashes for control of gold were frequent and left a trail of deaths and injuries. All this under the indifferent gaze of the authorities, who only saw the economic potential of the region. Gold, which was supposed to represent wealth, became a magnet for human tragedies. Life in Serra Pelada was hell. The workers were forced to work until exhaustion, carrying sacks of earth on their backs up fragile wooden ladders. The gold was washed and separated by hand, in a process that put the workers' health at risk. Many suffered permanent injuries, respiratory illnesses and, in the worst cases, death. All for the hope of finding a nugget that would change their lives, although for most that never came. The promises of wealth soon faded in the face of the harsh reality of collective suffering. The Serra Pelada phenomenon not only marked Brazil economically, but also culturally. The images of the garimpeiros covered in mud, working shoulder to shoulder in a massive crater, became icons of an era. Artists, photographers and filmmakers captured this phenomenon, transforming it into a metaphor for the human struggle to survive in the face of adversity. However, behind these romantic representations, the reality was much harsher. The exploitation that underpinned these images were ignored in favor of a simplified narrative. The Brazilian government played a controversial role in this story. Initially, it promoted the gold rush as an opportunity for regional development, but it soon became clear that state control was minimal. The military, which ruled Brazil at the time, saw Serra Pelada as a source of revenue, but its failure to regulate the area allowed chaos to reign. When they finally intervened, it was too late to reverse the damage caused. The absence of regulation only deepened the inequalities and negative impact on the region. If you are impacted by this story, subscribe to the channel for more deep and revealing content. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you don't miss a thing. Explore with us the darkest and most fascinating chapters of human history. Today, Serra Pelada is a reminder of the dangers of human greed. The crater is still visible, a scar on the earth that symbolizes the mistakes of the past. Many of the people who participated in the gold rush were trapped in poverty, unable to get their lives back together after losing everything in the pursuit of a fortune that never came. Local communities also suffered, facing social and environmental problems that still persist. Serra Pelada left not only physical wounds, but also a legacy of collective trauma. The environmental impact of Serra Pelada is an issue that continues to worry experts and activists. Toxic waste, such as mercury used to extract the gold, contaminated the rivers and soils of the region, affecting people's health and biodiversity. Despite efforts to restore the area, the effects of this gold rush are still felt decades later. It is an example of how irresponsible exploitation can leave irreparable damage. A painful reminder of the consequences of ignoring the balance between progress and sustainability. Serra Pelada is not only a story of unbridled ambition, but also of resistance and humanity. Despite adversity, the garimperos demonstrated an incredible capacity to fight, even though the system exploited and abandoned them. It is a reminder that true value is not in material wealth, but in dignity and respect for life and the environment. Each garimpero who gave his life on that mountain is a silent witness to a lesson that the world must not forget. Today, it is vital to learn from stories like Serra Pelada's to prevent them from being repeated. The search for natural resources must be accompanied by responsible management, which prioritizes the well-being of people and the environment. Only in this way can we build a fairer and more sustainable future for all. This story should inspire us to reflect on the human and ecological cost of poorly planned progress. What do you think about this story? Leave us your comments below. Share this video so that more people know the story of Serra Pelada and learn from its lessons. Make this narrative reach further to raise awareness. In Brazil, Serra Pelada was recorded as a dark episode in its history, but also as a warning to the world. Unbridled greed does not bring prosperity, but destruction and suffering. It is our duty to remember and act wisely to prevent history from repeating itself. Because in the end, the real treasure is not in the land, but in how we take care of her and of ourselves. Serra Pelada is not just a memory in Brazil, it is a lesson for the whole world. In the middle of the century, many regions still face similar problems, where the exploitation of natural resources goes hand in hand with poverty, inequality, and lack of regulation. Cases like this should serve as a guide to redouble efforts in environmental and social policies that guarantee sustainable development. Only by learning from the past can we avoid repeating its mistakes and build more equitable and responsible societies. The story of Serra Pelada has been portrayed in films, books, and documentaries, but each interpretation highlights a different aspect of the tragedy. While some focus on the resilience of the garimperos, others denounce corruption and government indifference. It is important to look at this chapter from multiple perspectives to understand the complexity of the factors that led to this catastrophe. In this way, we will be able to address similar issues in the present with greater knowledge and sensitivity. Beyond the direct impact on people and the environment, Serra Pelada left a cultural legacy that still resonates in Brazil. Songs and works of art inspired by this phenomenon capture both the desperation and the hope experienced by those who participated in the Gold Rush. These artistic expressions not only preserve the memory of the event, but they also invite us to reflect on how art can be a powerful tool for documenting and transforming human suffering into collective consciousness. Despite the years that have passed, Serra Pelada continues to be the subject of research and debate. Academics they analyze this case as an example of the dangers of a lack of planning and exploitation of natural resources. On the other hand, social movements use this history to demand greater justice and regulation in today's extractive industries. The interest in Serra Pelada shows that its impact transcends generations, becoming a lesson that continues to be learned. The tragedy of Serra Pelada is a compelling proof that decisions driven by greed without control measures can have devastating consequences, not only for those directly involved, but for future generations. This case also highlights the importance of educating communities about the long-term impact of mining and the exploitation of natural resources. Often, the lack of information leads people to situations of exploitation and extreme poverty, with false promises of prosperity. The story of Serra Pelada reminds us of the urgency of promoting education and transparency as pillars to prevent similar scenarios from being repeated in other corners of the world. In conclusion, Serra Pelada is not just an episode in Brazilian history, but a reflection of the global dynamics of exploitation and inequality. Its legacy urges us to be more critical and conscious about the decisions we make as society in the name of progress. Greed can be a powerful engine, but it is also a relentless destroyer. True wealth, as this story teaches us, lies in balance, respect for the environment and the protection of people. Serra Pelada leaves us with an essential question: are we learning from our past?